Hi, everybody. This is Tim Rivers with J6 Patriot News and American Gulag Chronicles. And joining me tonight is Ivan Ranklin, who we affectionately call the Deep State Marauder. You may have seen some of his antics recently as he's been sitting in there with Secretary of Defense Austin, kind of demanding some justice and accountability from those in D.C. who have basically refused to give it. Ivan, thanks for coming on tonight, man. I know you're really busy.
No, I appreciate you having me on. Yeah, it's the acting fake secretary because the person that appointed him is not the legitimately and duly elected lawful president. We currently do not have a legitimately elected president sitting in office.
I would
And
kind of
so
agree, but
whoever appointed him makes him an illegitimate acting fake secretary of defense, Lloyd Austin.
how do people in the special forces community, I had the rare privilege of working with them for almost 15 years. How do people in special forces community take to um, a director of that nature? I mean, how do you get respect for what you do? I know you've been challenging him.
How does he get respect or do
No,
I
how
get
do
respect?
how do you have respect for, the people who are supposed to be your leadership?
Well, I said basically to folks that I knew that on January 20th, if our institutions failed us and allowed the facilitated unlawful entry into the White House of the Chinese Communist Party's ambassador, because I had already seen it up to that point. The FBI had already seen the laptop. I had seen the analysis done by Marco Polo at that point, and I had seen sufficient evidence, right,
Yeah.
of the Biden criminal syndicate laptop to prove to me that anybody working for the U.S. government, the executive branch in particular, uh, must file a foreign agent registration as a sub-agent to China because the person in the White House is an agent of China. So that's where we're at. And
Yeah, sold out to the
I
CCP.
don't know what to say other than there is no legitimacy. He garners zero respect. He's an absolute embarrassment. He's obese. He wears his little face toilets, his face shields. Just like I said on my Tucker interview when it was reported in the fall of 2022 at this point, and it was aired on January 5th of 2023, that this guy is a complete embarrassment. We have, I mean, I don't even know how to say it. You can't say you've lost faith and confidence in someone's leadership when they actually are not a duly legitimate leader. So it's this like kind of word twisting of we have a totally belligerent occupying force in the executive branch that needs to be extracted, rooted out.
You know, all the people I worked with in the forces are long since retired or gone on to normal lives. But at the same time, looking at the toll that the Department of Defense took on our special forces groups for the COVID nightmare, and in some cases, I think even for gendering and crazy stuff. I mean,
Yeah, the
I know
COVID
Jeff McKillop, I
coercion,
know Jeremy
the
Brown.
illegal
They are,
mandate molestation.
yeah, absolutely. It's I think it's beyond that. I mean, it's like, hey, we want you to put your life in jeopardy, your career in jeopardy, just because we say so, not because there's a need or there's a requirement or there's a defense requirement for it, just because we say so. Um, and I don't think, I mean, most of the special forces guys I know how to take orders, but at the same time, they're some of the most independent people I've ever met, able to operate on their own in places that I don't even want to go to. And so I wonder how, what do we expect? Are we ever going to see any justice for these people who were discharged, who have decimated the skills and capability of our special forces units across the board?
All right. So what most people fail to understand is that at a bare minimum, if for example, I was the attorney for Lloyd Austin and I was the attorney for General Milley, right, defending them on the as defendants of Nuremberg 2.0, right, of slaughtering and destroying our national security, of mutilating and destroying our service members. My defense for them would be as follows: the following individuals at the FBI Brian Auten, Joseph Pientka III, and then former FBI General Counsel Jim Baker, all coordinated and colluded with former directors and senior officials of the CIA, as well as former of the FBI, in order to dupe the entire nation, to include Milley and Austin, into believing that the pandemic, the Fauci funded Wuhan incident, they were duped into believing it was a natural bat soup incident, number one. They were duped into believing that the clot shot was safe and effective. They were duped into believing that everybody that exposed natural immunity and alternate therapeutics, they were basically duped and manipulated in believing that those individuals were putting out mis, dis, and malinformation worthy of being designated as domestic terrorists by the DHS, right? So that would be their defense. But here's the problem. You can't use that defense because we're 3 years into this. So at the end of the day, if you're going to be defending Milley, Austin, or any single other general or flag officer, former or current, during this entire pandemic period, you're not going to have a defense. And we're going to come after the attorneys that are trying to defend war criminals.
Are you seeing this as court martials or tribunals? Tough question.
Well,
different
why
rules.
not both, right?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it's like, I know people are thinking, well, nothing's going to ever happen. Those that say nothing's going to ever happen, guess what? You might want to just move and get out of the way and shut your mouth. Or you can spend your time actually trying to figure out a way to make sure that it happens, to guarantee that it happens. If you're one of those that says nothing's going to happen, then I'm going to have to drag you along with us, which means you're slowing us down from actually effectuating the nice sharp end of the stick called treason.
How effective has this fear psyop of January 6th and the COVID nightmare and the lockdown? I mean, I hate to think that the American people are so damn gullible, but it sure appears that way. I mean, you can't fix stupid. I hate to think that this large of the population failed to comprehend the manipulation. Now it's easy, 2020 being what it is. Look behind me, I can see it perfectly clear, but how deeply do you think this psyop has taken root? And I mean, I don't see a lot of action. Even though people express a lot of anger, I don't see them doing anything. It seems that the effect of January 6th, the effect of what's been done to so many people for COVID, has had a chilling effect on everybody who might have come to the forefront and said, "Hey, enough is enough." What, where do we undo this? Jeff and I talk about this all the time about the psyop that was played on Jan 6, but it's even bigger than that. It's goes on right now. What's your viewpoint on how we undo something like that? How do we erase 3 years of lies and inject truth back into the equation?
All right, let me just contextualize this in probably the quickest way I can. Watch the Mike Benz interview with Tucker Carlson. Okay. Episode 25 on it, or 75 on X. Okay. And then here's the summary. In 2014, CIA Brennan, director, basically conducted a coup in Ukraine in order to allow Biden to tee up his son to get $1 million a year and 10% for the big guy on that first foreign transaction of money laundering. Okay. That followed up with other foreign transactions to include China and Moscow mayor's wife and other, et cetera, et cetera. The censorship industrial complex that was used against our foreign threats and adversaries and interests, such as in Ukraine, then turned around against our own in 2018 when the Democrats won the House and Nancy Pelosi became the Speaker of the House, who happens to represent the district in Silicon Valley, San Francisco. Mm-hmm. And so through that leverage could then, with her allies, Kamala Harris being the senator from California, to go ahead and have her staffers basically staff Twitter 1.0, to also have the former general counsel of the FBI staff the senior legal positions at Twitter 1.0 and coordinate the censorship industrial complex. Those that were from the former FBI ended up being those that actually spied on the Trump campaign, that authorized the illegal with zero predicate and defrauding the FISA court. They go from that to then covering up their tracks by sending themselves over to San Francisco to then cover up for it and then erase the truth about it. And so you have this escalating cover up after cover up. And then as 2020 rolls around, they're starting to think to themselves, oh my God, if Trump secures a second term, he's coming after us. Meaning John Brennan, Jim Comey. Remember when Chuck Schumer said, the intelligence community has 6 ways from Sunday of getting back at you. Well, guess what? The American people have 200 or 350 million ways from Sunday of getting back at you, John Brennan and Jim Comey. But the problem is when they control the censor, when they can censor and own the censorship industrial complex, they're able to continue their escalatory cover-up and stay in power. Once they lose a grip of that censorship, then we're coming for them. So what has happened since the illegally conducted election of 2020 and the subsequent illegal certification? We created Truth. We created Getter. We created more Americans on Telegram. Rumble was now a platform, right? We have all these truth and free speech platforms. Then Elon Musk sees the pivot. He purchases Twitter, changes it into X. Now Tucker's on X. We're seeing more and more information being distributed. President Trump just secured the nomination yesterday, or technically this morning when Nikki Haley dropped out at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's amidst massive censorship industrial complex, right? At maximal scale, right? So our First Amendment is there. If there was no censorship, I mean, he not only would he have been elected, right? I mean, like let's just say 90%, because people would have known and seen exactly what I'm articulating here, exposing every single individual scum within this deep state, primarily the two. So you have the domestic terrorist organization known as the FBI, and Chris Wray spearheads that. And then you have the CIA also covering its tracks through its foreign dealings on behalf of the FBI to cover up the initial transgression of illegally defrauding the FISA court to spy on Carter Page to be able to spy on the Trump campaign, right? Now, you said January 6th. January 6th was the culmination of the cover-up after cover-up after cover-up, escalatory cover-up since 2016, July, when they started spying on the Trump campaign.
Yep.
So what does that look like? Well, it looks like when Nancy Pelosi orders her sergeant at arms, Mitch McConnell acquiesces with his sergeant at arms to go ahead and work with the Capitol Police head of Intel and Interagency Coordination Division and the General Counsel of the U.S. Capitol Police to facilitate the unlawful breach into the Capitol, known as an entrapment or incited, facilitated riot, right? They call it an insurrection. Guess who conducted that?
Yep.
The leadership of the Article 1 branch of government. People don't understand that. I say this every episode on every show that I'm on. While everybody's fawning over the FBI and their gross role on January 6th, while everybody's fawning and complaining about, oh, the DOJ is so bad, the courts are so bad and violating, everyone's rights, the jury is so biased. Guess what? That's all true, but that is completely irrelevant to solving the problem. Solving the problem starts with reading Title II of the United States Code, Chapter 29. In there, it lays out the Capitol Police, its jurisdictional limitations within DC, roles, responsibility, missions. Then take a look at the U.S. Capitol Police Policies and Procedures Manual. And then you start to see and uncover that, guess what? Every single January 6th politically persecuted target is targeted to be politically persecuted by the DOJ and the judges and the jury pool in DC by none other than Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer through the Capitol Police Board, of which they appoint the majority of, the House Sergeant at Arms, the Senate Sergeant at Arms,
right.
and then they decide who the Capitol Police Chief is to go ahead and work with the General Counsel, Tad DeBias, to then criminalize whomever and however they want based on their political objectives. Fraud, waste, abuse, hook, line, sinker, and everybody has no clue that that's going on. They're just complaining that the DOJ is so bad. The FBI had informants. Clay Higgins says, oh, there were upwards of 200 of them. Well, guess what, folks? They were the supporting effort. The main effort was the Capitol Police Board and its leadership, Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, which begs the question. Let's look at Title II U.S. Code, Chapter 29, Section 1979. Well, in there, when people are saying, well, why don't they just release the video footage? Well, under that statute, it's the Capitol Police Board that decides on whether or not they're going to release the footage.
That's right.
Well, guess what? When Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer owns the Capitol Police Board, that video ain't going to be released. Only the video that's doctored, manipulated, and curated to support the political objective of an insurrection is going to be released, as they decide to take video and then force and coerce U.S. Capitol Police officers to lie in testimony with the objective of criminalizing your opponents in order to get to Trump.
And they've done a pretty damn good job.
And then here's how we fixed it.